Ladies and gentlemen, this is Elijah with Clarity Conversation, your most trusted source for clear conversations. Chris, take it away. What we got going on
No,
today?
that ain't, you gotta do the whole thing, bro. Today we're responding to.
Today, we're exploring a video um, reforming Eastern Orthodoxy. How come Eastern Orthodoxy never went through a reformation? The question itself sounds a little bit misplaced, but I think it's a very interesting video. Just generally speaking, it's an interesting video to see how the life in the East and the life in the West, how they're different, and perhaps maybe they're supposed to be different. Um, Outside of that, we're gonna give our comments, chit chat about it, pull out whatever value we can give for ourselves, for community, and outside of that, hopefully we learn something, bring us closer to the Lord. That's it, baby.
God, bro.
That's it.
Glory be to God, man. Can you hear me? I sound okay?
You sound like a bag of Skittles ready to get eaten. Like, yeah, yeah, that's good to go. Yes, sir. Time to
Okay.
rock and roll, bro.
I don't know if that was good or not.
Bloody wars of religion over the rest of the century. It was the Reformation, the most explosive religious earthquake in Western history. But if you look east towards the ancient spires of Constantinople
He
and
looked
the
like he from
monasteries
Whoville,
of
bro.
Mount Athos, at this same time, there is silence. There's no 95 Theses being
That's a
promulgated.
good
There's
one.
no Wittenberg or Geneva, no Greek Martinus, Eleutheros lecturing the patriarch.
Bro, I'm not gonna be able to unsee that, bro. Yo, you're a sicko, bro. This ain't the
Yo,
Grinch, bro. This
where
ain't
you
the Grinch
from, bro?
stole Christmas, bro. Yeah, that's wild, dude.
About getting back to the gospel, justification by faith alone, scripture alone.
All right,
You
all
got to
right.
remember that while the West was
That's funny.
drowning in ink and blood over the nature of grace
Oh
and the
man.
authority of the Pope, the Greek East seemed almost frozen in time. It existed in a kind of time rift between the late Byzantine era and the ascendant Ottoman Empire, which was Muslim. Why then did the Reformation stop at the borders of the Holy Roman Empire? Why didn't the Greeks protest and go from Orthodox religion and somehow imbibe a bit of Protestantism? Well, that's the topic that we're looking at today, the missing revolution. Why the Greek Orthodox Church of the East never went Protestant. To understand why there was no Reformation in the East, you've got to understand the socio political and religious context in which the Greeks in
Bro,
the
you could
East
probably put it on
lived in the
1.25 or something.
1500s.
Yeah, I be
You see,
forgetting
they
to do
weren't
that.
living in the sovereign kingdoms of
So I'm like,
France, England, or Austria. The Christians in the East were a religious and ethnic minority within the Ottoman Empire, which was largely Muslim. For the Greek Orthodox Church, the 16th century wasn't a time where you could invest a lot of energy in talking about faith, faith and works, justification by faith alone. Rather, they had other things to focus their attention, like survival. Under Ottoman rule, the Patriarch of Constantinople wasn't just a spiritual leader, but was also a political ethnarch, a leader of a whole ethnic group. They lived under the millet system, where you had different rules and different courts and laws for different ethnic groups within the Ottoman Empire. In many ways, the Greek Orthodox Church was the only thing keeping Greek identity alive. When your primary concern are things like relationships with the Ottomans, with your Muslim overlords, when you're worried about things like paying the jizya tax, when you want to stop your cathedral from being turned into a mosque, you generally don't have an appetite for a theological civil war. And the other problem is it was very tempting for a lot of Christian people to convert to Islam. That would improve your financial standing, that could improve your social status. So these are the sorts of issues they're dealing with in the Greek East. Now, we can contrast that in the West, where the Reformation was fueled by the rise of a new middle class. There was also new technologies like the printing press. And there was also a return to the study of classic Latin and Greek sources and study of these classical sources actually provided traction and stimulation for new ideas about government, civil law, and even religion. New ideas that could be leveraged against medieval philosophy and medieval institutions, and even the religious and political frameworks that people were living in. But they didn't have that in the East. The Ottomans banned printing presses so they could control the flow of information. Education was always limited to some religious context. And whatever views of law, history, and theology existed, they were simply being played in a different register than what you find in the Latin West. In other words, the intellectual soil for a Reformation simply did not exist in the Greek East. So there wasn't much of a prospect of Reformation ideas taking root in the Greek East, with perhaps one exception. There was
Pause
one
real quick.
moment where there was a brief foray from Geneva.
So real quick, listening to this, man, it's just a reminder, bro, that like where we find ourselves in the church and how our church looks, quote unquote, today has a lot to do not always with the church itself, but what's happening outside of the church and how the church has to adapt.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, on an interesting level, he's really pointing out and saying, like, okay, and then in the Latin West, where the Reformation took place, for the most part, there was no real enemies, right? If people were going to
Right.
war, if they were going to war, they were still Christian, right? If they were bickering about land, they were still Christian
Right.
by and large. But that's not the case in the East because of just the Muslim,
Turks. And,
oh, exactly.
I was gonna say, it's actually quite interesting. And speaking to Father David yesterday, the metropolitan of our diocese, North America, was it North America? And oh, he's an Archbishop of New York. But he said that in speaking with him, like, because he's Arabic, and he's like the way that
Oh,
he
for
talks
real?
about, yeah, because the way this, and the Antiochian jurisdiction is like Northern African, which is Arabic. So
Ah,
the
okay, okay, okay. I did. Okay.
yeah, the is based, where Antioch was. So he said something about how Metropolitan Sabo will say things kind of like in passing as if he sounds liberal more so than conservative, but he's like obviously he's not. Like, in the way that we identify how we hold things here in the West, it's like he would follow the lines of conservatism, but he said something to like this. He was like in passing, he was like, he's like women deaconesses, women deacons. It's like he pretty much was like shrugging it off. Like it's not that serious of a thing to be thinking about that deeply. But it's like here in the West, it's like women deacons, like, there's an uproar about it as opposed to like somebody like him. But it's like in passing, you would think that that means like he's, you know, uh, towards the leaning towards the ordainment of women deacons, but he's not. But he's just saying like in past because it's like what he's worried about, what they're worried about in that area is Islamic terrorists killing them. Like we're trying to
Hmm.
survive. We're not worried about what y'all are talking about in the West because we're just trying to live and worship God in peace, and we can't do that because people hate us for the faith that we have, and they're literally trying to kill us because of that. It's like y'all don't deal with that in the West, so it's pretty interesting that he's saying that. But it's like in the same regard, I think it's also I don't know maybe it's just my not because we talk about it, but it's like the hyper intellectualism of like what it means in the West to have faith. Like more and more, how much I realize that it's really living the life out as much less it is than trying to learn how to live the life. Like you got to do it. You know what I mean? But anyways, any thoughts?
I don't know, man. That last part's pretty interesting. Um,
Because he was like the Greek Orthodox didn't have the intellectual, as if we weren't trying to.
right, 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 right. And I think he's not trying to be unfair, but I
No,
think
no,
he
I
is
don't think
just
he is
trying
either.
I think he is just trying to point out in general, like, yo, the truth is peace and security and wealth do afford you to look into other things and to do other things that might not have otherwise been done, right? Because in a certain respect, obviously this isn't the case, but in a certain respect, you can almost say like, yeah, maybe they're under a form of slavery over there in the East. You know what I'm saying? Like based on what he's saying, they were having to pay the jizya tax.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The
exactly.
you know what I'm saying? Like just that by itself is crazy, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like that by itself is crazy. Like they're not worried about finding new ways to express anything as much as they are worried about staying true to themselves and keeping their heart posture in such a way that I might have to die tomorrow, right? Like I was listening to
Right.
this lady, she says, I tell my children every day before they leave the house, she said, you're gonna walk to school now. She said, remember, if anybody tells you, do you believe in Jesus? You tell them yes, and they say we're gonna kill you. You tell them that's fine, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? That's fine. Well, I'll die for my Lord. But it's like just there is something to be said about that, bro. Like, are we not really focusing on the right thing in the world here? You know what I'm saying? Like, if we really want equality on a global level, whom needs to be spoken to in Islam? If Islam indeed means peace, if it indeed means submission to God,
Right.
and submission to God leads to peace, how is it the case that there's still so much oppression, not only on the Christians, but also on the Jews? You know what I'm saying? Let's not get into too much of the geopolitics, but you know
Nah,
what I'm
we
saying,
know what
bro?
that is because it ain't God. But we keep on.
Yeah, we can keep going, bro.
across the Danube into the Greek world. And this is where we have to deal with Patriarch Cyril Lucaris. Lucaris was the Patriarch of Constantinople in the early 17th century. He was brilliant, very well traveled. He was born in Crete, spent time in Geneva, also in Poland, and it was there that he encountered not only reformed ideas, but reformed pastors and theologians. And he started reading John Calvin's Institutes, and he seems to have been deeply affected by it. He saw the corruption in the church of his own day, and he thought that the Protestant focus on scripture might well be the cure to it. So in 1629, Lucaris published a Confession of Faith, which sounded, well, kind of Protestant. He spoke of predestination, he rejected the veneration of icons, and under Cyril Lucaris, the patriarch, it looked like the great schism between the Greek Orthodox and the Catholic Church could be replaced by the great merging of the Greek Orthodox and the Protestant Church together. But it was not to be, because even in his own day, Patriarch Cyril Lucaris was a controversial figure, and there was a lot of internecine rivalries. He was condemned by several councils in his own day. He was also a victim of plots and schemes by the Catholics, particularly the French and the Jesuits, who persuaded the Ottomans to do away with him. So the French and the Italians and others, they did not want a version of John Calvin with a Greek accent knocking at their southern door. So they conspired with the Ottoman authorities, who had Lucaris killed in 1638. He was strangled by
Crazy,
Janissaries, and his body was thrown into the
crazy.
Bosphorus.
Hey,
And after his death, his legacy was not initially received well. At the Synod of Jerusalem, or Bethlehem, in 1672, Cyril Lucaris was formally condemned, and his Calvinism with him. And it was at this council that the Orthodox Church really had its own version of what you might call the Council of Trent. And they expressed their criticism with Protestant ideas, ideas about salvation by faith alone.
Imagine being able to build an app
so
with your
what council did you say it was?
Yeah, you might want to go back because that's something I want to look into.
Yeah, I know that council. Oops.
It's about salvation by faith alone. And they expressed their criticism with Protestant ideas, condemned, and his Calvinism with him. And it was at this council that
Oh
the
my gosh.
Orthodox Church really had its own version of what you might strangled by Janissaries, and his body was thrown into the Bosphorus. And after his death, his legacy was not initially received well. At the Synod of Jerusalem, or Bethlehem,
Senate of
in
Jerusalem.
1672, Cyril Lucaris was formally condemned, and his Calvinism with him. And it was at this council that the Orthodox Church really had its own version of what you might call the Council of Trent. And they expressed their criticism with Protestant ideas, ideas about salvation by faith alone, predestination, scriptural authority, the sacraments, and the church. So at this point, the door to the Reformation in the Greek Orthodox world wasn't just shut. You could say it was bolted shut. There was not going to be a massive surge of reformed ideas in the Greek Orthodox world. Now, this might all sound rather bleak, as if the Protestant Reformation and the Greek
Let's pause
Orthodox
it for a second,
tradition
bro.
are
So again, I like this is why I love studying history. And now that we're doing it and we're recording it, and this guy is a good historian, yada yada yada, whatever, right? But my thing is, bro, is I remember being a Christian, very faithful, on fire for God Christian, before I read any church history, reading only theology or just spiritual works. I'm like, wow, you know what I'm saying? Uh, what can the church do to be better? What, how can the churches come together? Like all this other stuff. But I'm not gonna lie to you. When you read church history, you find out that most people in the church are better at being politicians than they are at forgiving, loving, and praying for their enemies,
That's a fact.
right? So it was the Roman church who conspired with the Eastern church to kill Lucarius. And he died, and they threw his body into the river. Again, it leads me to ask the question, to what extent, right? Jesus said that I give you the power now. I leave you with the power that whatever you bind in heaven, it will, whatever you bind on earth, it will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. To what extent does the patriarch, to what extent does the cardinal, does the pope have to put somebody to death in disagreement?
I mean, I don't know in the sense of like the Orthodox Church. I don't think there's like decrees for us to have that ability, if I'm not mistaken. That's more of a emperor thing. 1600s is a different time too, so that's I don't know, bro. What are your thoughts on that?
I
Honestly,
mean, I don't
I
know.
don't know. I don't know about that situation. Like that was the first time I ever heard about that. So
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
mean, that seems like some what's it like? Not minority group, but like some people carry some stuff out on the low ski.
Right.
Because
That's and that's
he
a
was
possibility
ruffling
as well.
feathers. I was like, that's what it sounded like off his surface, but I don't know about that situation. So
Yeah,
I don't know. That's interesting though. But it's like like Roman Catholics are known as like burning people on fire on pyres and stuff. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't know. But then it's like I know there was a lecture Father Josiah was giving one day, and he was talking about like our history of Orthodox. He's like, our hands aren't clean either. You know what I mean? Like we got stuff that happened within a certain time frame, era or whatever, in which it's like tensions were really high. It was the Crusades, and it's like the Roman Catholics came and pretty much started cooking us, and then it was like I don't know. It's like what do people do in those times? Like that was a different time where it's like I mean, and then at the same time, it's like we think we're more, uh,
Enlightened,
yeah,
progressed
than like they were at that time. But it's like probably not really. People still do each other
at
dirty
all.
all the time. It's like technology don't change our corrupted nature. You know what I mean? If anything, it makes it worse. But
For real, for sure,
I
for
don't know.
sure.
It's interesting. It's an interesting situation. I feel like that's something I have to because even just him getting the post, but it's like he was denying icon veneration. Uh, using the words predestined because I was like, even predestination is like it depends how you use it. In what way is he using that word? Like it's just a word. It depends on what context you use. But it's like he said that he was already getting condemned in his own time,
And he
and
was
then
already controversial,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
But
yeah.
he's the patriarch of Constantinople,
But
and that's where
that's
that's
like
what always
wow,
is tricky
yeah,
for me. That's
yeah.
what always tricky for me
But that's
is
my
because
thing. Go ahead, go ahead.
no, you go ahead real quick.
Was like because we are a decentralized understanding of what this religion is as Christianity, like the idea of a patriarch, which is the Pope, the Bishop of bishops in Rome, like all this power is essentially posited into ultimately into one guy, and that's just never been our thing. So it's like, and it's under the supposition of this one guy is not infallible in its like most natural sense, but in certain cases he can speak infallibly. Like just as one person, that's just like we've never had that understanding. So it's like just because he's a patriarch, just because he's a bishop, doesn't mean that he can't be wrong. You know what I mean? So, but it does bewilder me how one can get to this position of power because it's obviously through multiple processes in which someone becomes a bishop and then is raised to a archbishop, a metropolitan, to a patriarch, which oversees literally everybody. Is like, especially within the 1600s. Obviously, that's
Islamic oppression, nonetheless.
amidst that for sure, you know. But it's like no one, absolutely no one, is shielded from deception, potential deception and delusion
Hmm.
into the wiles of the enemy, as opposed to living according to the will of God. You know what I mean? So yeah,
But I think that's just kind of what I'm getting at is that, again, Americans seem to have this Disneyified idea about history. Like
yeah,
we're
it's a
so
movie,
covered
bro.
from reality because everything is genuinely spoon fed to us. And so I guess in certain ways we have surpassed the supremacy of Rome in being able to force the citizenry to follow, right? But I'm not gonna get all on that topic right now because that's gonna carry me somewhere else. But I guess the point that I'm just trying to make, bro, is that it because you just pointed out
Appreciate the like,
the
bro.
the 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 Eastern Church is not centralized in the way that Rome is. You know what I'm saying? That's not to say that there's not power there, there's not influence there, but
Yeah,
on an institutional level, the nations around the the Bishop of Constantinople, they're not coming to pay him tribute in any form of respect or in any uh uh not formal respect. But
right,
that's the case that's been the case with the papacy since what
right.
1162, right? So my thing is though, if they're decentralized, if we're looking at decentralization, then who gave the okay for this man to get murdered? You see what I'm saying? And
I
like
mean,
you're saying, it has to be a group of people. And that, but man, this leads to the bigger philosophical question is who the hell has the right to say, okay, I am the artifice, right? I'm the one who's not, I'm not the artifice, I'm the arbiter, and I'm gonna be the one to judge. Now we can't let this guy keep on talking. Like he's gonna ruin our tradition. We gotta put him, we gotta get him out of here. Rome is saying that, the East is saying that. Oh, now we have something we can agree on. That's weird, right? Now we work together. But the point is, at the end of the day, is that a conclusion was reached, blood was spilled by holy men.
right, right. It's interesting, bro.
It is.
But why didn't we reform?
And yeah, I mean the Senate, Senate of Jerusalem needs to be studied. That's for sure.
Completely siloed, and there's not much common ground between them. But thankfully, the days of patriarchs being thrown in the Bosphorus and
The
Calvinism being
Bosphorus.
condemned by Greek theologians is pretty much over. In the 20th century, and I think also in the 21st century, there's been a whole new impetus towards ecumenical
Impetus.
exchanges between Protestants and the Greek Orthodox tradition. You know, I've met numerous Greek Orthodox priests, theologians, lay people who are really interested in what they can learn and pick up from Protestants. You know, such as the focus on encountering God with Scripture, you know, Bible study, biblical scholarship. How can this refresh people in their own faith in the Greek East? And many Greek Orthodox theologians are reading people like, you know, the Apostle Paul and Martin Luther and John Calvin and trying to engage constructively with them. Similarly, Many Protestants are tired of the sort of, shallow consumeristic worship, and many are looking east. Many are rediscovering, the ancient church fathers from the spiritual liturgies. They want a more mystical view of God. That's why the idea of theosis is becoming a far more common theological idea, that salvation means participating in the divine nature. And in places like Finland, and Finland is an interesting melting pot between Lutheranism and Greek Orthodox ideas. You're seeing in places like Finland, and I would also add places like Hungary, where you've got
That
Catholics,
sounds
Orthodox,
dope.
and Protestants all kind of converging and meeting each other. There's a lot of discussions and dialogue going on, both at the formal level and at the informal level. So maybe we need a kind of, Syro-Lucaris fellowship where Protestants and Greek Orthodox can get together. So, why then was the Reformation a Western phenomenon? Well, ultimately, the Reformation was a response to very specific legal, scholastic, social, political, and religious structures in the late Middle Ages. The West, embedded as it was within the Latin tradition, was obsessed with certain questions like, what must I do to be saved? And they were largely using Latin resources from the
I
Latin
ain't gonna
tradition,
lie, I
from
like
people
this
like
bookshelf.
Augustine and others, in order to answer that
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
You
it's
could even
dope.
argue that the Reformation was really a battle over different Augustinian ideas in the West, whereas the East didn't really have its own Augustine. They had their other theological giants, but they weren't wrestling with the tension of Augustine's thoughts. That's why in the Latin West, they were very focused on things like the role of purgatory or the utility of things like indulgences. But in the East, they were kind of, playing Christian music in a slightly different key. They didn't have the same beliefs or the same gravity of beliefs about purgatory, indulgences, or papal supremacy. The patriarch was never going to have his own army and territory the same way the Pope did.
I'm
Now, the fact
saying,
is, in the Greek East, for a
crazy,
patriarch,
bro.
you can't really reform a system that you don't belong to. The role of the church in the Greek East was very different from the role of the church in the Latin West. And to the Greeks, the Reformation looked like an argument between a father, the Pope, and his rebellious children, the Protestants. So it was kind of like an argument amongst your cousins that you don't quite understand. And the Orthodox felt that they were the grandparents watching from across the street, wondering what everyone was shouting
Hey,
about.
yo.
So the Reformation was very much a Western solution to a Western problem. But the East remained the East. It was unreformed. They had different theological debates, different fractures and divisions, which meant that it never could adopt the theological textures of the Reformation. Or we might say, with Rudyard Kipling, the East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet. But Kipling does add this line: till earth and sky stand presently at God's great judgment seat. Maybe the day where we all finally have unity between the Catholics, the Protestants, and the Greek Orthodox will be on the final day where we all stand before the Lord Jesus and give an account of our ministry, our theology, and our faith. That is probably going to be the one day where the churches of East and West, North and South are finally unified. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Early
Yeah,
Christian
it's
History.
not important.
That's depressing, man. So y'all gonna unify and come together and be one big happy family? He said the East won't never worried about none of that, bro. We had other stuff we was dealing with, them schisms and fractures. Like monergism and miaphysitism and monophysitism and monothelitism.
All the monos. Yes.
And diodes.
Yes. And the
Man.
trios.
Only one, brother. Only one.
Hey, one triad. Blessed
Come
be
on,
he.
man. Only
Blessed be
one.
he.
I mean, I enjoy the video. It's not. I mean, what can I be offended by? Like he kind of just like said some stuff. I was like, you're right, bro. You got it. But I mean, I think it's just understanding of like I don't know, because I think it kind of not affirms me, but it makes me appreciate the East more because it really does, bro. Like when it comes down to like, because was it Luther? It was Luther that even he was like highly praising the Eastern Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox, he called them, and it's just like when other people look at, and when I have questions, I have people have said this before, maybe like a handful of people within my last year or two of like coming to Orthodoxy of like the quote is, "Oh, they seem like if there's anybody that's closest to what the apostles may have believed, they seem like they're the closest ones." When speaking of Eastern Orthodox, and that's like if my biggest critique is like, well, not mine, but if the Eastern Orthodox biggest critique is like they don't seem to have changed that much, And that's cool with me. You know what I mean? Cause it just seems like it is. It's a. I mean, obviously, novel fits the description, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's really just what it is. 'Cause, I mean, again, it's like the cliche argument of your church wasn't around for the first 1,500 years. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, it's cliche, but it's also not wrong either. And I mean,
That's
when people,
totally wrong. That's nonsense.
all right, Mr. Invisible Church, you got it, bro. When I talk to people, I'm like, yo, where was your church at? And they be like, yo, we got overseers and deacons, and I'm like, all right, bro, but you ain't got no real bishops and patriarchs. Like these people that were in the first councils were patriarchs, and they were legitimately ordained and put into these positions in a completely different way through church governance than what is even understood as church governance today, and authority and submission to that authority, and what an overseer really is and a deacon really is more than just somebody who serves, with a literal definition of deacon. Like we get it, but it's also an episcopal structure that's shown in scripture and in the first centuries, and that's not what anybody has outside of, well, or orthodoxy, quote unquote, considering Orientals, but uh, them in Roman Catholicism, like ecclesiastically, at the very least, they still have that same type of structure that is evident in the first few centuries of Christian church governance and how we understood the authorities above us to be in proper place to set normative structures that bear on our conscience, that bind our consciences to follow, to be united to Christ and His body. You know what I mean? So, oh no, I was talking to Father David about that yesterday too, kind of, man. Where it's like it seems like you can see how fractures can potentially happen within the Orthodoxy, like modern day wise, because there is such a crazy surge right now that I can see how a whole bunch of different mindsets of bringing in your past baggages into the church, and like you may or may not have a great spiritual father to help lead you, and then with the surge, there's a whole bunch of numbers that not everybody can be tended to the way that they should be tended to, so they might fall into some false understandings of what the church really teaches because they might start learning on the internet from dumb people like Chris and Elijah, and
You're welcome.
but yeah, bro, I don't know, man.
I feel
So
like,
so why didn't the Eastern Orthodoxy reform?
I mean, is it a question that needs to be answered? I mean, he gave a good answer. I'm not
What
looking
would you what would
for
your
it. I'm not. I'm
like
not. I'm
summary
not
be? I
looking.
guess of that answer. Then?
It's apples and oranges, bro.
Ooh, okay.
That's really what I would say. It's apples and oranges, and it's really not comparable. Like, I think for if that video does anything for me, it solidifies in my mind that there ought not be at a certain level and at a certain point in time in history, there ought not be any comparison between our church and your church because now the divide has become so great, right? The divide has become so big, the way that we think, the problems that we have, what we talk about. Like, let us not forget if it was not for every time I see his name and it always escapes me every time I'm about to say it, bro. Dang, dog. Who's
Right,
the
right.
early Gnostic, man? And he only accepted Paul.
You talking
He
about
only
Marcion? Wait,
Marcion exactly.
Marcion only accepted Paul?
Yeah. So if it wasn't for Marcion only accepting Paul, then there would never be the impetus in the church to form a canon. And luckily, we were all still close enough to each other, and we were still under one nation, so to speak, Rome. Again, again, but that's the point. Let us not forget that a lot of what church looks like to you based on where you're at. A nation state has a lot more to do with what your faith looks like than quote unquote we follow the Bible. No, your nation state, your geography, the culture of your history, all the way back through your lineage has given you an expression to some extent of what your church looks like today. You know what I'm saying? Because um he said something, I forgot now at this point, but it just I just if anything can be brought from this video to other people's minds, it's that life don't always work. Life ain't black and white, bro. There's a lot of gray happening. There's a lot of gray. And when it comes to politics and making sure that people get fed and get clothed and they don't get attacked by the Muslim Brotherhood, the truth is, bro, what are we talking about? Like you said earlier, what are we talking about? Women getting ordained. Bro, the women are trying to keep their children safe in the house from
Right.
people breaking into it. It's not even something that comes into the mind. And so the point that I'm really saying, bro, is that because the East is still pressed in many places by the Muslim Brotherhood, I don't know, bro. Like I'm starting to see something different happening here, bro. Like I'm starting to see a
But
different responsibility that falls on the shoulders
I will
of the
say, like, I think it's kind of to what you were saying too. Of like, if it wasn't for Martian and things like even areas like these heretics that were like, all right, we got to make sure that people don't follow these people.
it,
Call together a council and let's parse this out so we can extrapolate what it is that we believe and set in a firm foundation through this normative authority to bind people's consciousness and say that this is a fullness of the faith. But it's like other than that, they're just living it out. And then it's like where you're like, how do I know what to believe if I'm to be a true Christian? And you would go to your priest or bishop in that local area. Like you
Mhm.
would go to this church and like what Saint Ignatius says, it's like where the bishop is, that's where the church is. If there's no bishop in this church, that's not a church. That's not a Christian church. So especially in these times of these still relatively small local communities in which they are again living out their faith logistically. They're it's like they're dealing with things and we're dealing with things that they didn't deal with at that time, but they're dealing with things that we don't deal with now. Where it's like, as long as I'm following this person that has been passed down the authority from the apostles, I don't know, man, it's a beautiful thing within that. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm just trying to live it out, bro, through tradition, oral teaching, and then it's like you have people that like Paul, like after he gave his oral teachings, then he's like, I gotta write these letters down to these people. I don't know, man. The beautiful mystery of God, bro. Because it's like you can see how within the Orthodox paradigm that works out. It's just a lot of scattering. That
Bring me into your world. What you mean?
because his whole premise is the Reformation. It's like the Reformation wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't specifically for this person, Martin Luther, and retaliation of the system that he saw was flawed. And I'm not saying that we don't have flaws or whatever in Orthodoxy, but it's like we're not worried about, in the same sense of what Roman Catholicism seemingly turned into, is we're not worried about power structures and like these authoritarian kind of moves. Like for to be a bishop, the Pope, and to have a standing army, like you're making yourself a king, is it's pretty crazy, bro. Like that's a crazy thought, and that's not the mindset of like the first 1,000 years. It's like I forget which council it is in the canons of which it's like you're not to assume if you're in a specific art office of clergy, you're not to assume any level of politics, like at all, in a local or national sense. You know what I mean? So it's like we don't conflate the two, and at some point that became very conflated, and there are obviously bishops that, because that's like what I was telling you about Saint John Chrysostom on the priesthood. He's literally referring. He's telling bishops. He's like, dang man, I just was at that point too. Hold on, let me see if I can find it real quick. Character and temptations of the bishops. The first of all is that he must purify his soul entirely of ambition for the office. For if he is strongly attracted to this office, when he gets it, he will add fuel to the fire, and being mastered by ambition, he will tolerate all kinds of evil to secure his hold upon it, even resorting to flattery or submitting to mean and unworthy treatment or spending lavishly. I pass over for the moment, for fear of seeming to say things beyond credit, the fact that some men, in contending for this office, have filled the churches with murder and split cities into factions. Like that's real, bro. Like, but it's like this is Saint John is the
That's
400.
Kronstadt.
No, Chrysostom, Saint John Chrysostom
Oh,
on the
that's
priesthood.
Chrysostom. Wow.
Yeah, on the priesthood.
Wow. Oh, that's a word, bro. That's a word, bro.
On the priesthood, and it's like this is recognized very early that these things happen. You know what I mean? This is literally the beginning of Christianity. Like the pillars, the pillar, Saint John Chrysostom, whose liturgy we celebrate every Sunday. A pillar is understanding that these things happen, and the ambition of the office itself turns to devilish things. You know what I mean? But it's like that doesn't deteriorate the faith itself. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
That we still hold to.
Uh,
Split cities into factions, bro. But if you have nothing else, bro, I think we can finish up on this. My boy out here doing weekly chores, which is lovely to see.
I gotta finish up my clothes, but I
Nah, I feel
gotta
you.
go to work. Gotta go to work.
I need to get myself right though. But I like that little video though.
Yeah, man.
I like that he's concise to the point.
He was very concise with that one. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. And I mean, I think he does do a good job because it seems like on some extent, I will say this as well. It does seem like on some extent he's answering questions that he's been hearing. Like, how
Right.
come the Eastern Orthodox never had a Reformation?
Right.
As
Right.
if
Right.
the Reformation as is the point in history that brought us enlightenment. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And again,
That's
that's
a
just
fact.
there's just
That's a
many
fact.
things. There's just many things that can be said about history, but I'm not gonna lie, bro. Like for me, it causes a bigger responsibility because the truth is, bro. Like the truth is now he really says all that. I'm like, what am I doing to help my brothers and sisters who really are going through Muslim, you know what I'm saying? Like every day, yeah, maybe I do believe in just war theory all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like every day y'all are being, you know what I'm saying? Like
It's
this ain't
funny.
cool.
Metropolitan Saba just got behind this thing to send out letters to all Ethiopian Orthodox to try to help send money to the people out there because they just had something. I forgot what it was, but it just got destroyed from Islamists. From Islamists. It was like it's real out there, bro, and it is. It's every day, bro. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's cute. It's cute for us over here, bro. And I'm saying that inside my AC house, bro. Knowing that the most annoying person might be
On
my
my
next door
laptop
neighbor. You know what I'm saying? Like,
with the
come on, bro.
cordless mouse,
Chill, bro. Chill, chill.
bro. It's like, bro, we got everything over here, dog.
Hey, but to whom much is given, much is required, much is expected. And I think that's the scary thing, bro. Like, that's the scary thing with trying to tell people what to do. You should believe this. You don't believe this. But Like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking?
You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, this person is literally in fear of their life every day, bro. Like, I ache for that. Like, that sucks ass. Like, that really sucks, bro. Because I'm gonna think about going to church on Sunday if I got enough sleep. The church over there is the only place that's genuinely safe. Genuinely safe, bro. It's
Yeah.
a different world, bro. It's a different world. We got all this money. We got all this quote unquote freedom. We're enlightened. We want to bring world peace. You know what I'm saying? We want to stop plastic from being in the ocean. We're trying to lower the temperature of the world. Bro, how can we genuinely say, as enlightened Americans, even leftists, how can you say it's none of your business that people are still being oppressed for their religion with swords in the East? Because Islam finds it necessary. It's a part of their eschatology. Bro, like that doesn't make sense, bro. It's barbaric, bro. Like for real, like how they talk about, well, oh, it's not, you know what I'm saying? We're beyond like what do they say about Donald Trump? He's a fascist, right? Like you can point that out and do something about it. But all the fascism and all of the wouldn't even technically call it fascism because I don't think they really have a it don't matter, bro. But you catch my drift, dog. You catch my freaking drift, bro. Something
Oh my
needs to be
dear.
done, bro. Something needs to be done, bro. That's crazy. God bless America, bro. Like for real. Like when I say that, like may we genuinely realize what we have. Sometimes in my mind, I always, when I'm reading through the book of Revelation, bro, I always ask myself the question, what is God gonna say, not only to America, but to the American church? Just like he did with the seven churches in the front of
Yeah.
Revelation. He
Yeah.
said something to all of them. And the thing is I don't think there's necessarily any person that can say, "Oh, but not me,"
No, not at all.
right? You know what I'm saying?
Without seeing cast that first stone, my boy, you're gonna be like, ah, dang, man. Ah, never mind. I ain't got nothing.
Yeah, bro. But anyways, man, if you want to wrap it up, bro, we can wrap it up.
Hey, man, it's here for another, dang it, another episode. That's not the word I was looking for. I can't. What's the word? That's it for another. That's
Come on,
it,
you
man.
got it. You got it, bro. You got it, man.
Installment, bro. That's it for another
Oh,
installment of Crazy
installment. Yeah, that's
Conversation.
right.
Till next time, everybody be blessed, man.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, hit us up with any questions, comments, concerns on some videos you might
Hit
like
that
to
like
see.
and subscribe.
I ain't
Now I
say
need to
all of
come.
that.
I do need to come up with some fire intros though, bro. Like, subscribe, and comment, share with your mom and them.
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
smoking buddies. All right, guys. God bless.